The next 4 days is Amazon's big Prime Day sale. I just got back from a 5,000-mile trip through the Baja Peninsula. I got up really early this morning. I went through the entire list of all the gear that I took on that trip, and then I cross-checked it with the Amazon Prime sales, and I consolidated it into a list of 25 items that are worth checking out. I am gonna throw in 2 bonus items at the end that are not on sale and are not even on Amazon, but they were the 2 mods that I got asked about the most on the entire trip. I've made a video like this the last couple Prime days, and every time I make one, you guys ask me to continue making them. These are really hard because you had to get up really early in the morning to check pricing, because I don't know what the pricing and I don't actually know what's going to be on sale ahead of time. So this isn't like a sponsored video. This is literally me checking real gear that I use and whether it's on sale and compiling a list for you guys. I know your time's valuable, so let's jump into the items. We're going to cover these as fast as we can. Okay, to kick this off, I've got a product that's basically a no-brainer and it's super cheap. This is a product from a company called Lyzen. It is a 4-in-1 charger. You just plug it into a normal cigarette port on your center console. It has 2 retractable cables. One is a USB-C, and then one is the old style that you plug into your iPhone, which work perfect because I have a new iPhone and my wife has an old one. So we both use the retractable cables. As soon as you're done with them, you just give them a little tug and they retract and they go away and they don't turn into that rat's nest in the middle. All right, this next one is also an easy one to explain. DeWalt hand tools. So they have a huge sale on their hand tools. The one hand tool that I do actually always bring that is a DeWalt one, it just happens to be, is a grinder. I always bring a grinder with some cutoff wheels because you never know what's gonna happen. Next up is a 5-gallon water jug that has the ability to pour water out of it that's not a nightmare and a headache. This is one of the ones that you can attach one of those battery operated pumps to, where you just tap the top and it will pour the water out like with a little faucet. But even if you don't have that attachment, it still gives you a regular nozzle on top instead of just one of these giant jugs you're always trying to pour out of. Okay, next one up is the cheapest thing on the list. This thing's only like $7. It is the MSR Alpine dish brush. This one came in clutch. Obviously you have to do a lot of dishes on these things. This thing has a scraper and a brush. It's the smallest thing that you can use that effectively cleans your dishes, but also we ended up parking under a tree in Baja that leaked an epic amount of sap onto our windshield. So we ended up using hand sanitizer and the scraper on the back of this MSR thing to scrape all the sap off of our window, and it worked awesome. This thing has like a million uses. It's incredibly cheap. Everybody should have one in their camping kit. Camp tables are always necessary, especially if you're gonna be on the road for a long time. The problem is those big ones that fold up usually use way too much room. So I'm a big fan of like the roll top camp tables. If you've never seen these, here's a link to them. These guys make them in 3 different sizes. These are the bare bones cheapest ones out there. I have one of them. I haven't managed to break it yet. There's lots of other fancier ones that have like aluminum tops and all these different things, and they cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars. But these ones are so cheap. They work. They're 32% off right now for the Prime Day sale. My Medic has a sale going on first aid kits right now. Now, you're gonna need to do a little bit of research to see what first aid kit is right for you. There are huge first aid kits. There are basic first aid kits. You tend to want to align it to the types of adventures that you're actually going on. We have a lot of nurses in the family that are actually pretty skilled at all this stuff, so we tend to carry a pretty advanced medical pack. The other thing I would recommend for you guys, you want to put a medical pack in your car in a really obvious place. And a lot of people I see getting fancy where they're getting like the cool camouflage looking one or the green one or the black one. Get the red one, the most obnoxious one that you can find, because you have to remember the person that gets injured that might not be coherent might be you. So if somebody wants to dig through your whole car and try to find you a medical kit, make it as red and as bright and annoying as possible so other people can find it too. We had some issues in Baja with cactuses where you needed tweezers. We had some issues with jellyfish, just stings, where you needed stuff to like stop swelling and irritation. So definitely make sure you have one on board. Battery jumper pack. This is a no-brainer when you're gonna go on a long expedition in the middle of nowhere where there's not a lot of services. If you leave something on and go to sleep and kill your battery, you could be toast. I have learned that some of these jump packs are better than others. Like for example, this one in particular, if I try to jump my diesel truck in the winter, it doesn't give me enough time for the glow plugs to cycle to be able to jump with this. So I'm actually gonna recommend one by a company called Noco. They have a big Prime Day sale going on right now. All the links for all the products that we're talking about will be in the description below. You can click on them there. Next up is our Boxo toolkit. I have covered this toolkit in length. It has a 5% coupon on it right now. This toolkit is about $550 because it is a full toolkit for working on a car when you're on one of these expeditions. If $500 for a big fancy toolkit is way too much, I made an entire video that covers this toolkit, and then we replicated this toolkit and even improved it at Harbor Freight for around half the price. So this one's definitely more organized. The actual case that holds all of this is just super nice, makes it super easy to work and find everything that you need. But if you need a more budget-friendly version than this Boxo toolkit, check out the video that we made that covers the Harbor Freight alternative. We used this on this trip.
Hey Craig, give me an update.
We are installing the new studs that these fine gentlemen brought us. From what town?
By we mean Mueller. I'm just hydrating.
We actually had one of the trucks that we had break 4 wheel studs off. I think I'm gonna add wheel studs to my spare parts bin. I have a spare alternator, a spare axle. I have a whole bunch of spare parts with me, but I don't have any spare wheel studs. You learn something new every day. I ended up replacing 4 wheel studs using all tools from that pack. No matter what cooking setup you have, for me in the morning, the most critical thing is getting a fast cup of coffee, and nothing will get you a faster cup of coffee than the Jetboil Mini. So that is what we use to make coffee every morning so we wouldn't get grouchy while we were making breakfast. Fire extinguisher for your car. While we did not end up using our fire extinguisher on the trip, we were going up this grade outside of Vegas, and I started counting the amount of car fires, because when there's a car fire, it kind of melts the asphalt and it kind of burns it in so you could see every single one. So my wife was driving and I just was dumbfounded. There was one about every 100 feet. So if you guys don't have a fire extinguisher, go online. I put a link in there. There's a bunch of different brands, a bunch of different sizes. There's quite a few that are on sale for Prime Day. Get one that has a mount that'll work for your car. I got one that has a mount specifically that goes around here and just brackets onto a pole. And it's mounted in the back of my truck. I tend to mount them away from the engine because if there is an engine fire, I want to be able to get to it without being burned. Okay, this next thing that I'm going to talk about was basically the hero of the entire trip. And no, it was not the power station. It was actually the device that I use to keep a power station charged. These things obviously hold a lot of power, but when you're on the trail for weeks on end and using it to power a lot of devices, I had to use it to power a fridge that we'll talk about later. I had to use it to power all of my camera gear because obviously I film videos for you guys and a whole bunch of other stuff. So in order to keep one of these powered up to be able to use for a whole entire trip, you can't just plug this thing into your little cigarette lighter. It will take more than a day to power up this big unit, to recharge it. So it doesn't work for you. You will get behind on power, and then once you get behind on power, you gotta worry about all your food in your fridge and everything going bad. There's a company called E-Taker, and they make an alternator. They call it an alternator charger. It actually connects to your battery, is what it's actually wired to. But of course, it wired to your battery, it charges off of your alternator when you're driving. The reason I like the E-Taker one is it gives you an option of doing both. It will charge off of your alternator and it will also charge off of solar, and it can do it at the same time. So I actually went ahead and installed a 200-watt solar panel on top of my truck, and then on my alternator charger, I was able to get 500 watts of charging. So if you combine those at 700 watts, you're actually able to charge one of these power packs up really quick. 700 watts on that's a 2,000 watt hour pack, the one that I took with me. That means in about 3 hours of driving, I can have the whole thing charged back up. Another interesting note about the e-taker that came in really, really clutch, and one of the reasons why I say it kind of was the hero of the trip, is it has 3 settings. So it will charge at 300 watts, 400 watts, or 500 watts. Well, one thing that happens, dust is really bad for alternators. And the alternator that I have on my Tundra has about 100,000 miles on it. In fact, I know that someday it's gonna go out. So when I went on this trip, I actually took a spare alternator with me just in case it went out. And sure enough, on the course of the trip, it didn't break down, but it couldn't keep up anymore. At the beginning of the trip, I was able to send through 500 watts, no problem. And after it choked on several thousand miles of dust, it couldn't do it anymore. So when I had it on the 500 watt setting, it would turn on and then it would turn off, and it would turn on and it would turn off. So I just decreased it down to the middle setting of 400 watts, and then it worked fine. So you have some ability to actually adjust stuff with the e-taker unit as well. And then also, in a worst case scenario, if your alternator is completely crapping out and can't keep up at all, you can turn it off and you can charge just off of your solar panels if you want to. So I liked the flexibility of it working both ways. I even ran into the problem with the alternator, and I was still able to keep my units charged. So that thing is amazing. The other thing that is so cool about the e-taker is they have a brand new series out. They have a 1,000 watt one that can charge both solar and alternator, and then they have a 2,000 watt one. The reason that the new series is so cool is that it has the 2 inputs, solar and alternator, and it has 2 outputs. The old one only had 1 output, so you'd plug the output from the e-taker charger directly into your power pack, and that was really all you could do. Now, you can plug it into your power pack, and then you can attach the other line to your battery. So when you have your whole entire car turned off, if your battery is getting drained by something like your lights in your car or camp lights that you have on the side of your car, it can reverse. It can put power back into your battery. And then also if the solar is still on, it can go from solar straight into your car battery. So it's basically always topping up your battery for you, so you're never gonna have to worry about a dead battery. There's a lot of different ways, obviously, to wire it and use it, so you're gonna have to go through that and study how you wanna set it up for your individual vehicle. But these new ones are on a Prime Day sale right now. Just so you guys know, I actually just bought another one of these when I saw that they were on sale. That's how much I like them. I now have 2 of them, so I bought another one for a different vehicle. I still only went with the F1000 at the 175, and the reason for that is most cars that have a smart alternator is probably not going to be able to push through 1,000 watts from the alternator. So the 2000 gives you the ability to charge 1,000 watts from your alternator and 1,000 watts from solar. I'm never gonna run 1,000 watts of solar on a roof of one of my trucks. The most I can usually fit is 200 watts and maybe 400 if I'm lucky. And then the most that I'm probably gonna pull from an alternator that I want to keep working for a while is probably that 400 to 500 watts. So the 1,000 one works great for me. So don't just automatically buy the 2,000 because you think, oh, it's better. Buy the 2,000 if you're going to put over 400 watts of solar on your roof. Or buy the 2,000 if you're gonna upgrade your alternator to one of these huge high output alternators. Otherwise, you're just wasting money and you actually can't take advantage of the difference there. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so hand in hand with that, let's talk power stations really quick. Like I said, this video is not sponsored by anybody, so I'm gonna throw a bunch of different brands at you right now. Anchor, this is my little unit that's 1,000 watt hours. This is the one I take on your weekend getaways, like your 3-day weekends. 1,000 watts is plenty for me, especially if I have that e-taker charger to charge it up. But this isn't enough power for more like an expedition, like 5,000 mile trip. I would have drained this too fast with all the different things that we were running. So Anchor makes bigger battery packs than this one. Check out theirs. They definitely have a Prime Day sale going on. You got to compare features. There's good companies that make power stations. Anchor is a great company. So is Bluetti. So is EcoFlow. All three of those companies have sales going on, but they all have slightly different specs from unit to unit. So the thing you need to pay attention to is the watt hours. That's the actual amount of power that it has to give. When they say like peak power, that's just saying the max amount of things that you can draw from it at the same time. So if the peak power on one is 2,000 watts and on another one is 1,800, that doesn't mean you have more or less power. That just means you can plug in more things at once. What will actually keep your devices running is the watt hours. This one's 1,024, this one is double that. That's why it's so big and so heavy. We ended up going with a 2,000 watt hour battery for this big of a trip and this long of a trip, and that ended up working out really well for us. We didn't really feel like we needed more power than that. The one that I actually took on the trip was one from that same company, E-Taker, that I used their charger. The reason I like theirs is it's a 2,000 watt hour, but it's a semi-solid state battery. So it has a metal case on it, and it's only would come up to here. It's smaller because of the fact that it uses semi-solid state batteries. It's not as big and bulky as this one, but it's also a lot more expensive. That one's around $1,099, whereas this one you can get on sale right now for $699. So it really comes down to budget and features. I did like the E-Taker one because these things get banged around so much. So having a full metal case and then being smaller than this was really, really nice for just packing when you're packing that long of a trip. We took on this trip the Anker Solix Everfrost 2 fridge. It is the smallest and lightest weight fridge I've ever used. It has wheels on it if you want to drag it around on a beach or anything like that, so that's kind of convenient. But it has its own built-in battery. If we want to take the fridge out and leave it in camp while I go do some scouting on some trails, we're able to leave it in camp, it powers itself. The other thing that's crazy about the battery that's in it is you can plug a solar panel directly into that battery and just run the fridge on solar all day, and it doesn't even deplete your battery. So that fridge came in really clutch, having all the different power solutions. It's a relatively smaller fridge. They have it in 2 different sizes. We took the small one on purpose and just planned our food really carefully. So I really liked this fridge. It worked really well for us. We never had any issues with it. Okay, so while we're on the subject of power, we're going to cover the weirdest topic I have ever covered, and that is going to be camp air conditioners. I've never used them in the past. This Baja trip was the first trip I ever went on and I took 2 units. We used one in our vehicle and we used one in my buddy's vehicle, and we kind of tested them against each other. This is gonna be the most fair camp air conditioner video you ever see because neither of these companies is paying me to talk about it. So I can really be honest here. I would have never thought of getting an air conditioner. That really kind of sounds like glamping to me. The other issue with ACs that people, I feel like, don't talk about enough is they take up a ton of room. So if you have the AC unit, which is about this big, but the problem is, you have to be able to protect that. So then that needs to go inside of a case so it doesn't get all beat up. So it ends up being 2 areas in your vehicle about this big is how much space you use. 2 of these, regardless of the brand. Because the problem is you have the unit itself that is the air conditioner, and then you have all the accessories, which are all these tubes and different stuff that you have to hook up to be able to use it. That sounds really obnoxious, but it's actually pretty easy to set up. So my complaint isn't in the setup time. The setup time really wasn't bad. They're really actually well thought out, really easy to use units. We tested the CyberTake AC, and then we also tested the Zero Breeze, their brand new Mark III air conditioner. Both of them pretty much identical in size. Both of them use a ton of power. We'll talk power consumption in just a second. There's definitely a difference in price here, but there's a reason. The CyberTake AC is priced it's on a sale for 50% off the list price, and that's $634. Even when it's not on Prime Day sale, I've never seen it listed at its list price. It's always, in the $700, $800 range. So the Prime Day sale is the best sale that I've seen for it so far, at $634. But yeah, it's about a $700-800 unit normally. Air conditioners are expensive. That's the other thing to realize. The Zero Breeze Mark III, that thing is $1,399, and then it has an option of a battery, a 1,000 watt-hour battery that you can attach to the bottom of it. That battery is basically a $1,000 battery, $988. And you can actually attach multiple ones of those batteries, so you can stack them to have enough power to be able to power the thing all night. Now, here's what you need to know about both of the brands of ACs. The CyberTake doesn't have an option of running on its own battery, so you have to plug it into your power pack. What we learned is if you leave the air conditioner on full blast, which is kind of what's necessary to get a tent nice and cool, like down to like 70 degrees, because you have no insulation in these tents, right? So you lose that AC really fast. So it was taking anywhere from around 600 to 1,000 watt hours per hour to run it on the full blast AC on either unit, okay? So that means that on a 2,000 watt hour battery like this one, it's only gonna run for like 2, maybe 3 hours off of that before it's depleted your whole battery, okay? And this is at nighttime more than likely, which means there's gonna be no additional solar coming in. You're probably not driving while you're running it. So 3 hours. If you're at a place where it's really, really hot when you first go to bed, but then at night it does cool off naturally, I could see it being great because you could run it for 2 hours, have it turn off after that, and then it already kind of cools off and you're good to go. But that's not how it was in Baja. In Baja, it was like 102 degrees. It doesn't cool off at night, and it was insanely high humidity along the Sea of Cortez. And that's where you would actually use these units because it's so hot and sticky, it's almost impossible to go to sleep. So you want to run it all night. To run it all night, they have an eco mode. The eco mode doesn't get your tent down to 70 degrees and super comfortable. It gets it down to just barely able to survive, but instead of being 100 degrees in your tent, it's like 85, okay? But 85 degrees I can sleep in, but 102 I can't. So we would put it on eco mode. On eco mode with the Zero Breeze, we had a version of the Zero Breeze that had one battery with it, which is 1,000 watt hours. And then we have an additional 2,000 watt hours with our battery pack. I keep pointing over here because there's one of these sitting down there on the floor. That probably makes more sense now. So this has 2,000 watt hours. The Zero Breeze had its own 1,000. So for 3,000 total watt hours in eco mode, we were able to have it run all night and keep it just cool enough to be able to sleep. I'm not gonna call it comfortably, but sleep and not just be, 102 with 90% humidity is basically unbearable. So I found it to be really useful. I live in Idaho where even when it's 104 during the day here, it cools off at night, usually down into the high to mid 70s or even low 70s. So in that scenario, I would never take an AC because it uses up so much space. But if you're camping in the tropics, if you're someplace where there's humidity and all that kind of stuff, I can see where these things would be hugely valuable. You just need to plan for how in the world am I going to have enough power to actually power this thing long enough to be useful. And you need to think like eco mode is going to get you probably 400 watt hours an hour is going to be consumed. Whereas in the other mode, you can see as high as anywhere from like 600 to 1,000. So it's they're not as efficient of units as they seem. The 2 times that we ran the air conditioner on full blast using our full battery pack as well as the battery that came with it, we never got more than 3 hours. Okay, so now we're gonna cover a couple things from the trip that worked so good, you should look at them anyway, even though they're not actually on an Amazon Prime sale right now. This is just 3 quick items, but they were used so much on the trip, I feel like I have to mention them. First one up is the Plano case. This is the case that I use. I know there's a million fancy Pelican cases and there's a million cases that mount on your roof that I don't really want because I don't want weight up high on my roof. So I put these in my truck bed. The truck bed, of course, is not sealed for dust. So I want something that seals really well and keeps my stuff from getting dusty. This one has this little groove around here. You can actually add rubber seal into there if you really want to, but I have never needed to. With this just normal plastic seal that cups over this lip right here, I have not ever had problems with dust getting in them. I've never had problems with water getting in them. I have driven with these in the back of a truck with no camper shell on it in the rainstorm and had no issues with moisture. I'm not guaranteeing it won't get wet. I'm just saying in my experience, I've never had problems. These things are like 27 bucks. Okay, let's talk about our scan gauge. A scan gauge is an OBD2, that's very hard to say, OBD2 scanner. It plugs into your OBD2 port, which is gonna be right below your steering column on any modern, newer vehicles. They tend to have a cable that powers it off of that port, and it gives you a little screen. In that screen with the brand new OBD2, the Scan Gauge 3, you're able to add up to 9 gauges that show additional stats that you don't see on your normal control panel on your car. So for me, for Baja, the two that were really critical is I add the transmission fluid temperature, or the transmission temp gauge, because when you're off-roading, if you're just leaving it in auto and you're driving, you do have a tendency on really loose soil, and especially like sandy beaches and stuff like that, you can overheat your transmission really easily. So I have my transmission temp always available to see how I'm doing. If you don't have a scan gauge, the only sign that you ever get that you overheated your transmission is a dummy light comes on when it hits, I think, 250 degrees. By the time you hit 250, you've already cooked all your fluid, which is now worthless. It needs to be changed, which is really hard to do in the middle of nowhere in Baja. The other thing that it helped me do was to troubleshoot my alternator. The e-taker charger was no longer charging. I couldn't figure out if it was a problem with the e-taker charger or what was going on. What I was able to do is I was able to watch my voltage on my scan gauge, and I was able to see that my alternator couldn't keep up when the e-taker was turned on. And then that's why I lowered the power that the e-taker was demanding from the alternator to make everything work together. It came in handy at the end of the trip a whole bunch of times because we ran into a major problem with the vehicle where we threw a ton of codes, and I had to look up all the codes to try to troubleshoot and understand what is going on with the vehicle. If you will notice, the vehicle is not here in the shop. And a lot of the items that I was talking about that I took on the trip, I haven't been able to hold and show you because they're still in the truck. And the truck is not here. You'll have to watch a future video about our Baja trip where I'll break down all the things that didn't work on our Baja trip. And you can find out why our truck is stranded and not here at the shop. We definitely had quite the adventure. Okay, final section of this video is also a couple additional quick hits, but these are things that we used so extensively on the trip that I cannot not mention them, but they happen to not even be on Amazon. These are really quick hits. First off, a 270 top oak awning. I already told you, it was hot in Baja. We were experiencing over 100 degrees on a regular basis. So even when we were camping on the beach where we could go and jump in the water constantly to stay cool, you still didn't want it sunburn all day long. You also didn't want the inside of your car to just constantly cook. So getting a 270 awning, parking that into the sun to where it's shading your vehicle and giving you some shade. I was taking naps under it in the middle of the day on the hottest part of the days just because you were trying to stay out of the heat and not just cook. Their new awning is awesome. It has built-in LED lights that you can plug into your power pack, so it lights up your whole camp just perfectly at night. That was literally all the lighting that I used that night. I didn't use any other camp lights or anything. I literally just used the awning light, and it was awesome. They even make it to where you have Velcro in walls. I obviously didn't use those in Baja because it's so hot down there. We didn't want to wall anything in. We wanted the breeze to move through. But their awning is $30 off for Prime Days, but it's on sale on their site for $469 right now. In the inside of the car, in the back seat, I've deleted the back seat, and I want to have storage in there. And the problem in there is you have a lot of vertical storage, but you don't have a lot of space. So unless you find a way to stack things where you can see easily what stuff is, you can't really utilize your space. So we grabbed these stackable crates from Harbor Freight. The reason I'm sending you there instead of Amazon is they are cheaper than even the stuff that's on Amazon that's on sale. They're stackable and they lock into each other, so they don't just like slide around in the back of your thing. Okay, so next up is the glue tread kit. On an expedition like this, where you're driving around cactuses every day and you get sidewall issues, get a glue tread and just put it in your car for peace of mind. These things have the patches where you can patch sidewalls really effectively and drive on it for a long time off-road and in rocks. I recommend getting one of their off-road kits that actually has these valve stems. So if you ever rip off a valve stem, this is a type of valve stem where you can stick it in and replace the valve stem without having to take your tire off your wheel. Only some of their kits have this. If you happen to be one of the people that have jumped on board with using Starlink when you travel, especially for like safety communications and things like that, I learned a lot on this trip. Up to this point, I've always just used the magnetic mount on your roof. But it turns out in Baja, it's so hot that your antenna, if it's outdoors in direct sunlight, actually overheats. That's another thing. So even if it does stay on your roof, it overheats and then it shuts down. So we learned right away that the go-to solution in a place like Baja where it is super hot was actually the mounts that have these little guys. So this is a little suction cup that you actually pump up and pump down. So it has way more suction than just a normal one you stick to your window, because you pump up the pressure on it. And where people put it in Baja, and this is probably gonna be controversial in this video, but we ended up doing the same thing and it worked really well for us, is they actually put it dead center in the middle of their windshield, just kind of right here, suction cupped with the antenna facing out. That ended up, I know it's not like perfectly angled toward the northern sky, but while driving with it in the internal windshield right there, it ended up working great for us. You can set your AC to where it kind of blows air up through the vent up there and keeps it cool enough to keep it running. Okay, and just like I promised at the end of the video, here's the 2 mods that I got asked about more on this trip than anything else that I've done to the vehicle. The first one was the Apex Designs Fast Deflate valves. These are the valves that you simply replace your normal valve on your tire, and you can pull a little lever on it and it's made to let air out rapidly. So I can air down from being like at driving like freeway 40 PSI on a 37-inch tire. I can air all the way down to like 15 to 17 PSI that I'm usually using for the dirt roads. And I can do that. It takes about 9 seconds per tire. It lets an insane amount of air out all at once. So it is the fastest way to deflate. They're a little bit controversial because a lot of people are like, oh, you can't use those on a rock crawler. And I don't know if I necessarily would use them on a dedicated, like competitive level rock crawler. This Jeep behind me right here uses them and has never managed to break one off yet. And this thing is on 42s and can crawl just about any trail in America. But I could also see how they could get broken off because they aren't flexible like a normal valve stem. And in the same vein as that, once you're done airing down your tires and you get off the trail, you got to get back on the freeway, then you obviously have to air up. Apex Designs also makes this incredible spool air hose that winds up, stores away super, super nice. And then when you need it, you just unroll it and you can go and air up each of your tires. When people see that, never once have I ever pulled that thing out and somebody doesn't ask, who makes that? I love that. I've got to get one of those. So that's Apex Designs. They actually don't even work with YouTubers. They don't offer discounts. They're made in America. I understand why they don't offer discounts, because their products are really well designed and really well made, and the price is the price. That's just how it is. Okay, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I am losing my voice. Somehow we just covered close to 30 products as fast as I could. I hope this video is helpful. If you want me to keep making these each time they have Prime Day sales, make sure to let me know in the comments. It's the only reason I'm continuing to make them, is just simply because you guys keep asking me to. I appreciate you guys. The next couple videos that are gonna be coming out is definitely, one's gonna be covering our Baja trip, what happened at the end and why our car is not here. That's a little bit of a sad story. And then we've got some updates on the Jeep build behind me, the Rad Jeep FC, and the rock crawler build coming soon. So tune in for those in the future. I'll see you guys then.